Welcome back to my channel, Bring Peace into Your Life. Over my last couple of videos, I've talked about bringing peace into your relationships and how to navigate difficult conversations. Today we're going to look at tying these both together. We're talking about how to set boundaries in relationships. When a lot of people think about setting boundaries, they think it seems like something that sounds very cold. Like setting boundaries means that you're being selfish or that you're pushing people away. And that's something that a lot of people feel like. But what I know about boundaries is that boundaries are actually one of the kindest, most loving things we can do for ourselves and the people we care about. They're really there to protect both of us. And it means that we can then show the other person how we would like to be treated and how we value ourselves. We're going to look at what boundaries are and why we need them. Firstly, let's look at what boundaries are. Boundaries are not walls we put up to keep people out, and they're not an excuse to be rude or controlling towards another person. They are about simply setting limits for ourselves and others about what we will and will not accept in our lives and the behaviour that we will tolerate. They're about getting to know yourself, knowing who you are and what you need to feel safe and respected within a relationship with someone else, and then working on the communication so that it is clear to the people around you what your boundaries are. When we get on an aeroplane, the flight attendant always tells us to give an oxygen mask to ourselves first before we help someone else. Boundaries are really our oxygen mask. They're how we make sure we take care of ourselves and how we show up as the best version of ourselves in any relationship that we're in. Many people feel that when they're in relationship with someone else, whether it's a family member, your partner, or a good friend, that saying yes to everything is what you really need to do, when actually that can be really exhausting. And if something doesn't feel right, it's okay to say no or reject the idea. When we don't set boundaries, we end up resenting the people we love. We say yes when we mean no, and then we wonder why we feel so drained and maybe frustrated or angry with the other person at times. This is because we are not giving ourselves boundaries and we are doing whatever we can for that other person, regardless of whether it's good for ourselves or not. Boundaries create clarity. They let people know exactly how to treat us and they let us honour our own needs without guilt. In my work, I've realised that boundaries are very important. However, many clients that I work with really struggle to set boundaries and they find it really difficult to look at taking care of themselves and honouring themselves. There are many reasons why we find it difficult to set boundaries, and some of it can be individualised to each and every person. However, there are some aspects that I find a lot with my clients that come up. So one is guilt. We feel guilty for asking for what we need. We worry we're being too much or that we'll hurt someone's feelings. And that can be really difficult when you want to ask for boundaries and ask for what you need. Because if you don't do that, you're not being true to yourself. This can then lead to anxiety because you start to worry if you've said the wrong thing, if you've upset the person by saying no or putting your boundaries in place. And that can then bring a lot of anxiety and people can then struggle with their mental health because of this. This can then lead into worry and fear. We can be afraid of losing people. We think if we set a boundary, the person will leave us or stop loving us or think less of us. And that can be really terrifying for people who are in a close relationship and who are really happy and they don't want to lose that other person. However, not being yourself and not being true to yourself can mean that you are doing things that are not comfortable for you. You're not being true to yourself and you're not actually being fair to the other person because you're doing things and putting up with things that you aren't happy about. Another reason is sometimes we don't actually know what we need. So quite often when we put other people ahead of ourselves and we do that on a regular basis for a long time, it's very difficult to really understand what we need and know what we want. And then setting boundaries and putting limits in place can be really difficult as a result. Not knowing where your limits are makes it extremely difficult to set boundaries, and a lot of clients that I work with have that issue. They know that they need to set boundaries and that they want to set boundaries, but because they haven't been in place so far, it can be really difficult to then start setting boundaries. This can be really in your personal life or your work life, but I find a lot of clients, especially at work, knock themselves out and don't put boundaries in place, and then they end up starting to get to a point of burnout, and then they realise that they have to put boundaries in place. But when you haven't had boundaries in place and then you start to put them in place, this can be very difficult for the people around you, because it then makes them feel like there's an instability, and it takes time to then put these boundaries in place and actually show that you're respecting yourself and what you can and can't handle. Quite often we're not told how to put boundaries in place. So many of my clients grow up or have grown up in houses where boundaries weren't talked about or where their needs were not prioritised. So it makes sense that you don't know how to then set boundaries as an adult. There are many dynamics within relationships, especially with your parents, or even if you're brought up in a single parent household. The dynamics of your parents and who you were brought up with and the way they handle boundaries and the way they handle conflict can make a massive difference on how you then manage boundaries as an adult. Or if you can't actually manage putting boundaries in as an adult, that can be a result of your upbringing and how you were taken care of. All that said, I think what we now need to look at is how to set boundaries. And we know they're hard to set, but it's about looking at what we need to do for ourselves. So we need to look at the practical aspects of putting boundaries in place. So the first thing to do is really to get clear about what you need. Before you can tell someone else what your boundary is, you need to know it yourself. You need to take some time to take a step back, be in a quiet place, maybe even when you're journaling and writing down how you feel, and just sit and take your time and ask yourself, what is making me feel uncomfortable? What do I need to change? Or what boundaries do I need to put in place? I'm going to give you an example. So maybe you're feeling overwhelmed because your partner always plans things without you asking first. Your need here might be to have a say in what you do together, or maybe a friend keeps venting to you about their problems for hours on end and you need to set a limit on how much emotional support you can give them right now. Write it down if that helps. Be specific. The clearer you are with yourself, the easier it will be to communicate it to someone else. If you do not know how you're feeling or what you need or what you want, it's very difficult to then explain that to someone else. Choosing the right time to talk about these things and to set boundaries is really important. It's really not a good idea to try and set a boundary in the middle of an argument, or when you or the person that you're dealing with is stressed, tired, or in a hurry. Find a time when you can both sit down and talk without distraction and listen to each other. You really need to communicate with kindness and clarity. Start with how you feel, explain the situation, and then say what you need. Let me give you an idea of how this would work, looking at the previous example. You could say something like, you never ask me what I want to do. It's so annoying. You could say that, but instead what you could try is, I love spending time with you and I feel really valued when we make plans together. Lately, a lot of things have been planned without me and it makes me feel like my opinion doesn't matter. Would we be able to make sure we talk about what we both want before plans are made? Try to notice the difference in what I was saying. In the second example, we're focusing on our feelings and not blaming the other person, and we're also being clear about what we need. When you set boundaries, you have to be patient. People might be surprised at first, especially if they're not used to things being a certain way. They might push back a little or forget that you've put that boundary in place. And that's okay, because change takes time. If you're consistent, it's really important to be consistent. But if you're consistent and you work on it, it can really make a difference. So for example, if you said you won't answer work messages after 7 p.m, don't answer the work messages after 7 p.m. If you've said you need one night a week to yourself, stick to that night. You don't need to over-explain or apologise, just gently remind the person that that boundary is in place. There are several different types of boundaries. So there are time boundaries. So things like saying, I have 20 minutes to talk at the moment, or I can't talk just now, but I could talk on another day. There's emotional boundaries. So to say, I care about you and want to support you, but I can't talk about this right now. There are physical boundaries, like saying I'm not comfortable with people hugging me. I would like to shake hands instead. Communication boundaries. I don't check my phone first thing in the morning, or I don't check it late at night. It will be on silent. And financial boundaries. So someone may ask for your help, but you might need to say, at the moment it's not in my budget and I can't help you in that way. The key is to make boundaries work for you. What's right for one person might not be right for another, and that's totally okay, but it's about working on what's right for you. Setting boundaries won't feel easy at first, but every time you set a boundary, you're taking a step towards a more peaceful, respectful life, and you deserve that. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's self-care, and it's one of the best gifts you can give yourself and to the people you love. If you've tried setting boundaries before, or you're planning to set some boundaries now, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Share your stories, ask any questions, and people in the comments will hopefully respond to you. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you would like to see more videos and get more support from me. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.